Welcome back to Blueprint to Heal. I am really excited to have Brianna Ladapo here. We are going to be having hopefully an incredible conversation. Anyway, welcome, Brianna.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
So, Brianna recently wrote a book and Emerging from Darkness. I just wrote it, I read it over the weekend. Actually, I've been reading it over 2 weeks. It's pretty, there's a lot of stuff in there. And I highly recommend everybody get out and buy this book because it's very profound. And I want to say, I feel like it took so much courage for you to not only write the book, but then publish it. And, I want to know, like, what drove you to put yourself out there like that?
It was never my intention. So when I was going through all the things that I write about, all the trauma and how I got to the other side of it, um, I was really a mess for a long time. I was on a very, very dark path. And then when I went through the process of finally dealing with all that trauma and getting through it, right on the other side, my gut was yelling at me, like, you need to share this, you need to share this. And as anyone who's read the book knows, this all happened a week before COVID. 1 week before the lockdowns is when I finally had really gotten through a good chunk of my trauma. And that's an ongoing journey. I still take steps every day to get there. But my guides said to me, okay, go away for 3 days and write your book. And I was like, what book? I'm not writing a book. And it was in the middle of the lockdowns, and my husband was always gone. He was always in the hospital working. I had a brand new baby and two other little boys at home, and I was trying to work from a distance. And it was wild time. School had been shut down, and I thought, if ever there was a terrible time to leave my family for 3 days and write a book, this is it. But at this point, I know better than to ignore my intuition. That's gotten me into all the trouble I've ever been in. So I told my husband, and he's so wonderful. He knows when my gut speaks, I have to listen. So I went away. I got myself a room at a little hotel for 3 days. And I remember getting there and checking in. And the night before I went to sleep, and I prayed to my guides. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Please, like you've told me to come, you've told me to write this book. Please pour through me because I have no idea what you want from me. And so I went to sleep feeling a little panicked. And I woke up the next day and I sat in front of my laptop and I didn't move for 3 days. And it wasn't intentional. All of this just came pouring out of me. And I did get up to go to the bathroom and eat occasionally, but
I
I
was
didn't leave
going to
that
ask you that.
room. I was almost in a trance. I had to get this out all of a sudden. And so it was mostly just a stream of consciousness experience dump. I just put it all on the page and got it out of me. And I was amazed. I left with a few hundred pages of writing, but it was nowhere near book ready. And I thought the intention was to turn it into actual prose and get it out there one way or another. But my guide said, nope, wait. And I heard that for 2 years. Wait. I was like, wait for what? So anyway, we continue living our lives. And in the meantime, we moved to Florida and we moved in October. And right after we moved into this brand new place, we've uprooted our children and our family, moved across the country to a brand new situation where we know no one. My guides pipe up again, say, go away for 3 days and finish your book. And I just thought, you guys have got to work on your timing. But so I did it again. And when I opened up the file that I really hadn't looked at since the 2 years earlier when I'd written it, I finally understood why they had me wait. Because my story hadn't changed, right? The information remained the same, but my perspective was so different. And had I published it when I wrote that first iteration, if you will, it would have been cathartic for me, but I don't think it would have been much of a service to anybody else because I was still angry. But finally, when it was time for me to write it, I had worked through a lot of additional things and had a completely different perspective. And by then, I felt strongly compelled to share my story because there are so many people in pain going through similar things. I mean, we all have trauma. It is the walking wounded on earth right now, several generations deep. And so I knew that the best thing I could do to help would be to talk about it, would be to tell my story.
Well, the question I have for you is coming from a religious background. A lot of people are, I would think, would be what's the word I'm looking for? Naysayers and maybe even like a gut reaction when they hear people talk about their guides, right? And, being divinely led. And you know what I'm saying? It's like there are people that are probably will reject what you have to say just because of that. You know what I mean? Rather than being open to hear what your message is. Because, as you said, we are the walking wounded. There's wounded people everywhere. But I think that a lot of times people suppress that, with alcohol, staring at their phones, and just trying to distance themselves from that. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. That was my family. I grew up in a house like that with very, very religious people who actually assumed that well, now I call them gifts, but at the time they told me that these things were from the devil because through their dogmatic lens, they couldn't understand how these things were possible. And I was a little girl, I didn't even know it was weird. I was just born that way. It was perfectly normal to me to see angels and hear my guides. And at one point, they thought I had a brain tumor, my family. And I don't, for the record. Um, but I've come to believe that, first of all humans are capable of this. This kind of connection is supposed to be our natural state. We were never supposed to become wildly disconnected and be pitting one against the other. That's the separation consciousness is an illusion, but it's an illusion that serves the powers that be, right?
Right.
We are much easier to control when we are consumed by infighting and focused on all the ways in which we are different rather than all the ways in which we're the same. And if they, the proverbial they, whatever you want to call it, the darkness, if they could manage to disconnect us from source, they can convince us that we are small, powerless, need to be told what to think, when none of that could be further from the truth. Humans are actually very powerful creator beings. That's one of the pieces of the Bible that I actually love, is how it talks about the human created in the image of God. That piece, I don't think we take seriously enough. We are not powerless. We are incredible creator beings. We are supposed to be. And we're supposed to create connections based on love and what is best for the collective. It was never supposed to be an us versus them mentality. And that doesn't serve humanity, but everything that the darkness has done has been in service of perpetuating that myth. Right? We need to be told what to do. We need to be managed. We need to be handled. We can't make our own decisions. So when people remember that they're powerful and they allow that connection, and it's not hard, right? You can literally just ask whatever resonates with you. For me, it's my guides. They've always been there. That's what I'm familiar with. For others, they may feel more comfortable saying angels or God or whatever it is, or even your own higher self. But you can ask for help. You can say, please, increase my connection, show me my path, show me how I can contribute. This idea that we're all walking the world alone is an illusion. And I still don't think my family has come to terms with that. And I also think a lot of people will not in this lifetime. But that's
Right.
okay. I'm not here to share the message with them. I'm only here to talk to the people who want to hear it.
Right. Well, and I think that just from my own perspective, I feel like this whole major division thing came when COVID hit. To me, like I knew that people were divided on certain issues, but you could still have a conversation with people. Even people that maybe your situation's a little different, but I felt in my world that I could still have conversations with people. Or if I had a conversation, try to have a conversation, they were not open to it. it would be a polite, okay, I don't agree or I don't want to talk about it. Where it feels like during COVID, just everything blew up to such massive proportions. And, and I know part of it was the media. And I've talked to a friend of mine who does nonviolent communications. And she explained it to me that they drove the fear so hard that people are now stuck in survival mode. The people that still are, getting their boosters or, maybe firmly on these, being very divided or, trying to blame other people for whatever's going on. They're still in that survival mode. They're still living in fight or flight, that they haven't been able to recuperate from that. And, to me, it like it hit at the core in myself when I realized that.
Absolutely. I think your friend is right on. Early on in COVID, when I was watching people who I know are brilliant, who I know have wonderful, warm hearts, whose intellect I respected and whose achievements I respected, just fall for this narrative without ever asking any questions, without considering what I know they already know, without giving really any moment for common sense. Now, it didn't make any sense to me at first. I thought, how is this happening? How are they hijacking the thought processes of these otherwise brilliant people? And then I came to the same conclusion as your friend. They have spent so many generations laying the groundwork, gently forcing people into fight or flight. So most people have to worry month to month about how they're going to pay their bills, how they're going to put food on the table, whether they have job security. We're like the frogs in the pot, right? We've
Right,
barely noticed our freedoms being taken away, our rights being chipped away, and us existing in this constant state of extreme stress. Like you said, we're all in fight or flight. That's another thing that I still have to work on every day because we live in a world that supports that way of being. But when COVID hit, it was like the hammer dropped. They had laid all this groundwork, and all of a sudden, they really tapped into those deep-seated fears they had created in everybody. And all of a sudden, almost everybody was controllable. They were so afraid they lost the ability to think or question, which, boy, that's exactly what they want, right? We don't want anybody questioning the narrative. And that really threw me. And I gotta tell you, I thank God all the time that I happened to do my big healing a week before that all started. Because if I hadn't, I probably would have fallen victim to the narrative along with everybody else, because they would have activated my latent fears and my trauma. And
right.
the only reason that didn't happen was because there was some divine timing at play, and I had done the work, at least a lot of it, right before. So COVID ended up almost feeling like a test for me.
Right.
Like, did I really learn? Did I really heal? But a lot of people haven't had the opportunity to heal.
Yeah, and even when you present somebody, like one of the things I did with the people that I love is, I would try to have a conversation with them and it was like I could feel they were resistant. So I put together an email, right? And the email started with, I love you and I want you to look at this other information. And I talked about, well, 99% of the people survived COVID. 99%. And the 1% that wasn't are people that are, have averaging 4 to 5 comorbidities and they're over 85 and you're only 50. Why, you're not at risk and your kids aren't at risk. And, I was trying to help them think critically, like really. And had I understood this whole fear thing, maybe I would have approached it differently, but I don't know what else I could have done. I was trying to be gentle and loving, but still, it was like, you know, there was like this wall.
Yeah, I don't think there is a way to overcome fear without dealing with the trauma that created it. So truly, I don't think there's more you could have done. I tried the same. I tried logic, I tried information, and always delivered from a place of love because especially in a world that was as divided as it was then and continues to be, you only take that risk if you really care about humanity, right? Or care
Right.
about your family or your loved ones. It's not as if we're all doing this for kicks.
Or money.
Or money.
Yeah,
My goodness, I'd rather be on vacation
right.
than 24 hours a day, Joe and I constantly toiling. But it's that important. But I think that's, I have to hand it to them. It was evil genius what they did because you cannot combat fear with logic. And everyone has to deal with their own fear. You can't fix that for somebody else. And I'm learning that the vast majority of the population does not seem to have the strength, the wherewithal, the desire, or the tools to really do the trauma work it takes to get to a point where they are truly sovereign and can make decisions that are unaffected by external forces.
Yeah. And one thing occasionally I'll put out there, like a post about, we all really want the same things. We're all about love. We care about our family. We want to be safe. We want to be secure. And I try to encourage people to talk with their neighbors and talk with people that they disagree with and really have a conversation that is open and open to receiving, you know, and this idea that what just see what this person who you think you're very different from, like have that conversation. Maybe you'll find that you have more in common with them than you thought.
I love that. I think one of the greatest, I don't know if I should call it a hoax because it was done quite deliberately, but one of the greatest feats of the darkness is convincing people, starting in school, I believe, that rather than engage with someone who disagrees with you or is on the opposite spectrum or whatever it is, and then learn together by having that conversation, you shut them out. And this is actually one of the main reasons I pulled my kids out of school a few years ago and started homeschooling because they, rather than teaching children how to deal with their emotions, how to share them gracefully, how to stand in their truth without making somebody else wrong, and how to have a conversation with someone who completely disagrees with you and be able to share your perspective, they are teaching them silence, conformity, and running away. And I've noticed, so I have three little boys. So we're constantly trying to find babysitters for date nights. And it's not easy because my little guys, oh, they're precious, but they are a handful. And I have noticed increasingly when I interview these 20-something girls, 95% of them can't look me in the eye. They are literally looking at their phone and holding it like a security blanket while they're visiting with us. And I always give them an hour or so with my kids because there's no better barometer than my children. They know exactly what they think. And they don't engage. They keep their distance. They don't jump in and play.
They
They
don't
don't even
know how to.
allow, they don't know how to connect. It's
Yeah.
terrifying. So we end up taking the kids on our dates because it's very hard to find a babysitter. That's what's happening out there, and
You guys
it's
need to move to this side of the coast.
You're thinking about
I'd be happy to take care of I'd be happy to
it.
help you
Thank
out on a
you.
date night.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I see that with, with my daughter. My daughter's 22, right? So it's very hard. Their heads are in their phones and they really do not like to have a conversation where they're asked to explain their thoughts, right? They rather have you look at an article or something else that they found online rather than coming up with their own ideas.
Yeah, critical thinking has been lost, sadly.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's very scary. And I also think they don't know who they are. They have no identity and they are much more comfortable being told what to think,
yeah,
which is, of course, the opposite of what we need to. We need to be raising critical thinkers and doers and children who are comfortable being exactly who they are and who are not comfortable being asked to be silent and small, or we're going
right.
to end up in the same situation in another 50 years.
Right, right. So I saw that hit piece that The Guardian did.
Yeah.
I mean, It was like, and it's surprising because, your husband is, with Governor DeSantis in a red state, and the Guardian, I think, leans that way. So I was really surprised I assume you read the article.
I did.
Yeah.
Yes, I was entertained.
Oh, so good. So you laughed rather than, because,
Yeah.
I can't imagine being in that situation where, your husband at least is a very prominent figure. So, like, it's one thing if they attack him, but then they go and attack you. I mean, I don't know if I would laugh at that. I mean, I have to be honest. I think I would take it personally, even though I know I shouldn't, especially because what they wrote was garbage. But, how do you deal with that kind of
Well,
negative press?
I mean, to honestly, if it were 10 years ago, I would have taken it personally. I would have handled it very differently. So I am very sensitive. My husband calls me a tender heart. And, I certainly don't enjoy being in the spotlight. That's never what I wanted. I did not, and Joe didn't either. Neither one of us set out to do any of this. We were essentially called to do this. We did it because we had to, but we were not looking for, we didn't want the spotlight. Um, However, dealing with my trauma and really uprooting a lot of the things that made me vulnerable to certain things, to, certain criticisms or hurt or shame or fear, getting a lot of that out of my system has allowed me to see things more clearly. I try really hard to stay in emotional neutrality so that I just see what is there and not, I try not to bring anything to the party and I try not to take anything away. So at this point, though I think, a decade ago it would have destroyed me. At this point, honestly, I was flattered because, like you said, Joe's the one who's the public figure, right? He's poor guy. He's fair game because he's in the system for better or worse, and so we expect that. But I was very interested to see that all of a sudden they clearly perceive me as threat. And I don't know if you saw that there were a spate of other articles that came out right around the same time, all hit pieces. And the funny thing was, these were all really big, well-known publications. And about a week before they came out, I received several emails from my website, my work email, from all these different reporters from all these different outlets. And the creepy thing is, they all had the same list of 20 questions.
Right, of course.
Somebody had given them all the same list of questions and the same charge, clearly. So I took that to mean that they're threatened. And I thought it was funny that, I mean, of course, they were trying to make me sound ridiculous because I believe in the divine and have a relationship with the divine. But that's because that's the most terrifying thing that could happen to humanity. Like we were talking about earlier, if people remember that connection, they'll remember who they really are, and they'll realize they don't need to be a slave to someone else's narrative. They don't need to be dictated to and controlled. And that is the greatest fear of the darkness. So now when somebody writes a hit piece like that, I take it as a compliment. It means I'm doing my job.
That's good for you. As I said, I don't think I could take it that. I would probably spend, night after night just, being in that ruminating brain. Even though I have lots of tools I use to get me out of fight or flight, for me, like, talking about, some family issues that we discussed prior to the recording, I still replay those thoughts. And, it's hard to. Yeah, I've done a lot of work, but it's still hard to move past those kind of hurts, you know?
I agree. And that was my experience right up. 'Cause I had done so many things to try to heal because I knew when I left my family that I had a lot of healing to do. I just didn't really know how. So I tried everything. I tried regular therapy and self-help programs like Landmark and Avatar and
Right.
travel and reading every version of the Bible, just trying to understand. And I got something out of every experience, definitely, but none of it was ever enough. I felt like it, if anything, it brought the trauma to the surface and then left it there. It never left
Mm,
me. So I was a ruminator too. And it wasn't until I met Christopher, the guy that I talk about in my book, who helped me. remember how to transmute. And I say remember because it's clearly something that I had known how to do in previous existences because it came back very naturally, but I had forgotten that was possible. And it was only then where you quite literally change the energy. So I'm left with the memories of everything that happened. I remember it clearly, but I no longer have that emotional charge around it or the pain associated with it. And for me, transmutation was the only thing that worked. Nothing else really helped me truly move past it.
I'm going to probably have to give him a call.
Yeah, he's great.
He's in California, right?
He is, though he travels a lot.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not flying out to California right now. I don't want to go anywhere near that state.
Oh, I don't blame you. I'm
But
pretty sure we're not welcome anywhere.
so I have a question for you. So what would you say if you had to name five things that are getting in the way of people accessing their intuition, remembering, having that remembrance? I realize five is either a big number or a small number, but if you could give me a few examples, like for someone who's watching this or listening that would like to that where this resonates to them. And of course, we want them to buy your book because they're going to learn a lot of great stuff. But what else would you say are the steps that somebody can take to help them move forward and, regain that self?
So it's an amazing question. And there are a lot of things. And the trickiest part is most of the things that I'm about to talk about are things that have become normalized in our everyday lives now. And part of the reason that they have been normalized is directly to prevent us from being able to hear that voice, that intuition. So one of them is screens. Unfortunately, we are in this position where everything that we do is expected to happen on a screen. Even before I took my kids out of school, I took my littlest on a tour of a kindergarten classroom just to see. We were still figuring out what we wanted to do. And by and large, it was an adorable classroom. We had teddy bears and bright colors and the ABCs, but on every tiny desk was a laptop. I
Oh,
thought, surely they are not
kindergarten,
just kindergarten, 5 and 6 year olds. And I asked the teacher, I said, you're not really going to put these little children in front of a computer. And she very proudly almost boasted, oh, yes, our curriculum is state of the art. It's all online. And that was the end of that. That was the last school tour we ever took because I looked at my husband. I was like, over my dead body.
right?
Absolutely not. So, the first of all, it's the distraction, right? It's this attempt to engage you in an alternate reality. That's why social media can be so dangerous. And it can also be a great tool. I don't want to say, oh, we should just wipe it off the map. Maybe we should, but that's a whole other conversation. But people use it unconsciously, they use it mindlessly. And we see this a lot. This is why, sadly, the suicide rates are climbing in certain populations because they end up with this false idea of what reality looks like. And simultaneously, they lose the ability to connect to real people.
Right.
And then as an aside, all of the blue light that comes out of these devices is killing our ability to produce melatonin, which is a much more powerful detox agent even than glutathione. We've been sold this bill of goods about how it's just a sleep hormone, but no, it's not. It's actually very important to our functioning. So it's doing a lot of things that are separating us from ourselves and making us unhealthy. Number two, and it's related to number one, but EMF. We have too much of this in our lives, from the cell phones that are now so powerful, they almost act as mini towers, to the wireless in our homes, to the towers going up in our yards that we now have no control over at all. This technology is very harmful to the body. A lot of us can actually feel it, and a lot of people can't. But unfortunately, that doesn't change the fact that it is designed to disconnect you from your body, whether that's from your intuition or just your basic level of health. It's designed to disrupt your sleep. And sleep, my poor husband, I yell at him about this all the time. Sleep is very important. We are not getting enough rest. We are not grounded anymore. We're not getting our feet in the earth anymore. We're not getting enough minerals from our soil and our food anymore. We're not getting what we need to combat the damage being done by this constant exposure to EMF. So even if all you can do is turn your wireless off at night and put your phone, I've got mine in one of these anti-radiation cases, just whatever you can do, little steps. And
So,
then
so I want to stop you before you go on. So I also want to talk about a few other things like the smart appliances that people have, their smart meter outside. In
Mhm.
Florida, I hear that they will actually replace it for free, but there's a higher charge per month. But I think when you weigh the difference, I think it's worth it. I actually put a tensor ring around my smart meter. I'm not really sure, if it does anything, but it was like $50 or something, so I bought it. But I think it's important for people to know that there are tools out there you can use to help decrease the EMF. And for me, like I have a very hard time staying in a hotel. I just cannot deal with the bombardment of the EMF. So, I have these little stickers, everywhere. I'm not really sure if they do anything, but I have them and, put your phone in airplane mode. There's a lot of things you can do to help reduce that. So anyway, I'll let you go on. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're so right though, because it's absolutely popping up everywhere, and they're trying to normalize that becoming our whole lives. They want everything to be automatic and smart, and it's humans who are losing. We're trading our health for convenience. So,
Yeah,
um, actually, on that note, another huge thing is what we're putting in our bodies, which is not going to surprise anybody, but it's a big deal. Even if people are conscious and aware and trying to make good choices like drinking clean water, eating organic food when possible, eating local. Unfortunately, because our soil is so depleted, our laws are so lax, we have really poor leadership almost everywhere. Even if you're doing all those things right, we're still not getting what we need. And because we're being bombarded with chemicals, in the water, in the air, in the food, not to even mention medications and other things, we're not only not getting what we do need, but we're getting a lot of things that we don't need. And so we're in this constant state where detox has to become a way of life. It's no longer good enough. I used to do a big detox once a year in my teens, and then twice a year in my 20s. And now every day of my life, I am thinking about detox. And because I'm so sensitive, I'm like a human barometer for all of this stuff, along with one of my children. And if I do not take measures every day to make sure I actually have enough minerals in my body to make my mitochondria function, like, do I actually have enough binders in my body to get rid of everything that I'm taking in, even unwillingly? If I don't do that, I can't function. I literally will shut down. I've been through a lot of illness in the past 10 years, and I'm grateful for it because it taught me so much about what's happening that was outside my understanding and what I need to do to combat that. But it's disgusting. It's crazy that all this is being thrust at us. But in addition to making us physically unhealthy, all those things separate you from your soul, from your intuition. It makes those voices harder to hear. And it also creates stress, right? And stress, being in fight or flight, that makes for a lot of people, that makes things like meditation or slowing down to tap in seem like a very low priority when you're worried about feeding your children, which I
right.
completely understand. And on that note, that leads me right to the next one. We live in a world, and especially, I think this is especially true in this country, I'm sure others as well, but especially in the United States, we have this pervasive narrative that if we're not going, doing, we're not enough. There's no appreciation for getting your feet in the sand or sitting in the grass, leaning against a tree and grounding yourself in nature and letting that toxicity slip away. There's no appreciation for slowing down and having a quiet afternoon with your kids, or whoever you love. For me, it's my babies, so they come up a lot. But we are constantly told we need to be, if we're awake, we need to be working. If we're not producing, then we're not worthy of anything. And again, they start this in school. They train children right from the get-go to be little producers, little factory producers. And that leaves very little time for critical thinking.
Well, and I also want to mention that after school activities. So they're learning that, oh, we get done school. Okay, we got this, sport, practice and all year round, parents will sign their kids up for multiple events because they think that's going to make their kid better, right? If they're involved with more activities. But I think it's feeding into that stress cycle,
I
right?
completely agree.
Be-
Homework too. Same
because they're
thing.
not getting that downtime. They're not getting that, and the parents not getting the downtime because the parents working all day and then taking, showing their kids to different events. And, rather than that pausing, right? Let's take a pause. Let's, as you say, go to the beach. Let's go to the park. There's so many things we could be doing with our kids, and that way they're learning from a young age that, okay, this needs to be a priority. Now, I think we had talked previously, I told you that my daughter had gone to a Waldorf school where they don't even start homework till fifth grade, and they don't have any computers at all until high school. And, to me, that was a high priority to, and they really do have that connection with the earth and the rhythms of the year. And, I think if you're not in that environment, how do you know? Like we're almost like following the leader. We're like this pack as parents, right? And they're going through what they feel like they should do for their child.
Yeah. Well, your daughter is very blessed to have such a wise mama. It's amazing that they don't do screens until high school and that no homework till fifth grade, because I completely agree. Only one of our children has ever used a computer, and that's our eldest, and it's strictly for homework purpose, or sorry, no, not even homework because we homeschool, but for let's say his papers or his writing or his research. And it's limited and it's supervised.
That's great.
I just don't believe that. Well, I don't want to sacrifice my kids to this system, this behemoth of an ideology. But yeah, you're so right. All these things are designed to tell kids that it's not okay to just pause and be. My kids have come up with probably the most creative and lasting favorites of their games and activities out of boredom because we wouldn't
Right.
let them turn on the TV.
Well,
So
that's where creativity is born, right? When they're
yeah,
bored.
yeah, absolutely. Yesterday, so we're in the middle of a move, which always fun. And yesterday, the plan, since it was Sunday and we finally had a down day, was to really buckle down and get stuff done. We needed to get a lot sanitized from the mold and put things away and just get some order. But my kids, all three of them, they just weren't in that headspace. They seemed stressed and anxious. So we said to heck with it and went to the beach for the whole day.
Great.
And they went to sleep happy and settled, and they woke up this morning full of sunshine and ready to learn because we were able to honor their needs in the moment, which school is a huge distraction from, right? It doesn't teach kids to listen to their bodies. It
Right.
actually tells them to listen to their teacher or whatever external authority figure is going to decide what's best for them, which is so dangerous.
Yeah.
So goodness, I have more if we want more tools, but I also don't want to go, I don't want to talk your ear off.
Oh no, you talk away. I'm
Okay.
sorry I keep interrupting you. I know you're on
Oh,
this
no, no.
this train of thought and then I come in with my little thing. So,
No, please do. Are you, I'm kidding? No, this is great. Um, One thing that is related to consumption, so beyond food and water and the things that we physically put in our body, are the things that we allow into our minds, and our space, for that matter, into our energetic field. So I feel like this got worse during COVID too, though maybe it was always an issue. These streaming services and this 24-hour entertainment, the 24-hour news cycle, the constant availability of all of these distractions that take us out of the moment, I think it's really hurting people's ability and even desire to slow down and drop in and check in with themselves. Because it's so much easier if you had a rough day to just come home and turn on Netflix, right? And
yeah,
zone out.
yep.
And I mean, I've been guilty of this myself, But at least now when I do it, I'm conscious of the fact that I am making that choice and I'm going to have to deal with the consequences. I know it's not good for me. But a lot of people, I don't think they've even had the opportunity to consider what that's doing. And, I'm never going to lecture anybody about what they watch or don't. But the fact is, you're going to have a very different energetic experience and vibrational response to watching a slasher movie full of realistic violence than you are watching maybe a rom-com or a documentary about something that interests you or a how-to. There's a difference between something that feeds your soul and something that destroys it.
Right,
And, I'm a Hitchcock fan. It's not that I never ever watch scary things, but I try to be mindful about what I'm allowing in. And I've become that parent who doesn't let her kids watch anything produced after 1985 because there was a very palpable shift. You can just feel the frequencies behind entertainment these days. It's very different. It's predatory. It is designed to mess with your vibration. It's designed to lower it. It's not designed to raise it. So you really have to be careful with what you're taking in, especially unconsciously, where maybe it's the music you listen to in the car on the way to work. Maybe it's the news station you watch. Maybe it's the news at all. Media is largely responsible for the spread of that fear that we were talking about earlier with the pandemic. It's what they do best. And unfortunately, now that almost all of the mainstream news stations are owned by a very small handful of people, it's the same messaging being pushed across every single front. Kind of like when I got all those emails from all those different outlets wanting to write a hit piece on me, but the questions were all the same. Someone is
right.
pulling the strings. Someone is dictating the way they want us to see the world. And it's not us right now.
Yeah. So during 9/11, that's when I realized what was going on because, well, for one thing, when 9/11 happened, I found out I was like, I used to watch some morning show. I forget which one every day. That was like the way I started my day, cup of coffee, watch a morning show, and then boom, the planes hit the towers. I was still in my pajamas. I was actually, that was the first day of opening a healing arts center in Asheville, North Carolina. We had just moved there, and it was our opening day. Well, I didn't get out of my pajamas for 3 days. I stared at the TV. I was like pulled in by the fear and so I had lived in New York to go to chiropractic school, and I also my first practice was in Arlington, Virginia, about a mile from the Pentagon. So I felt a connection to both of those places. And on the third day, it was like I realized that they were using emotional manipulation to keep me engaged. And I don't think I've watched the news like that since then. I think that was it. Like once I realized they were playing a game. That the more fear they could put out there, the more we would watch, the more they could get advertising dollars. And it was such like an eye-opening moment for me. But again, they prey on fear. They prey on people's emotions. That's how they keep us engaged. If they had a TV shows that were just, all day long, if they had a news program that focused on good things, they probably would lose money. Right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, I realized we're probably running low on time. So, is there any kind of final message that you want to put out there? Is there anything that you want to share, just to give our listeners something to think about?
Yes, I realized that I've spent the last several minutes talking about essentially what not to do, and I really didn't touch on what to do if you really want to strengthen your connection with Source and really get back in touch with your own intuition and be able to hear that beautiful voice inside you that is never ever wrong, right? Will always guide you. some of the best things, in my opinion, to do are number one, meditate. And I know that's a dirty word for a lot of people. It does not have to be an hour in an ashram with no distractions. It can literally be 5 minutes in the morning with your tea by a tree or staring out your window. All that is just giving yourself a little bit of stillness and silence so you can actually feel again and hear what that voice is telling you. Another thing, I feel like in our culture, if we're not making money at it, we don't think it's worth doing. So even if something brings us great joy, like say painting or singing or gardening or whatever it is, we don't prioritize it if it's not bringing in an income because we're told it's not worth anything. But I think those are maybe the most important things to focus on because those are the things that get you in touch with who you really are, what lights you up, what gives you purpose. And not only is that wonderful for you, right? Because it changes who you are and how you show up. It strengthens that connection to source. It raises your vibration so that you're showing up with light and joy and love. But for everyone who's watching you, like for the parents, it's very valuable for your children to see you taking care of yourself like that. Because too many of us, including me, we spread ourselves far too thin. We don't prioritize self-love, and then we crash. And I think women in particular are very guilty of this. At least I sure am. And lastly, pursue divine relationships. I think a lot of people keep folks in their life for a sense of obligation sometimes, or history, or family, blood. And I'm certainly not suggesting people go and cut everybody off, but very often we keep people around longer than we should, and we allow them to break our boundaries just because we share whether it's genetics or a history or something like that. And that's not a good enough reason. It's very important to surround yourself with people who actually see you for who you are, love you for who you are, and they energize you. Have you ever gone to a party or something and ended up just on your back for 2 weeks after that because it was such a draining experience to
Yes.
do the small talk? Like I can't do that. And then I've had the opposite thing happen where I've been at an impromptu gathering of amazing Soul Tribe members and then been on a high for a week because it was such a beautiful exchange of energy. And those are the people we want in our lives. And it's okay to love people from a distance who are not bringing it to the table. It's okay to wish someone well and hold the space for them, but not invest your time or energy because it's hurting you and it's taking away your ability to do that for somebody else, to show up for the people that you need to show up for. And then I'm going to stop talking, I promise.
No, no, talk away.
But very lastly, I know with everything going on in the world right now, everything we're seeing on the news, just all the darkness, all the violence, all the ugliness that I know a lot of us hoped we'd frankly be past by now, right? Um, I want everyone to know that what we're seeing is a transition. It's a good thing. These are growing pains. We're actually not moving backward, we're moving forward. That ugliness that we're seeing has always existed, but now it's finally rising to the surface where it can be dealt with. Darkness remains dark until you shine a light on it. So all of that ugliness that's been bubbling under the surface for generations has to come to the surface to be dealt with. So it's going to be rough for a while. Things are going to look and feel just unnerving and uncomfortable and maybe scary for a while. But I really want everyone to know that this is all in service of the world that we're working for. It's the world that we are trying to create that works for everybody, and it's going to work out. And the best thing we can all do is bring as much light as we can and stay in kindness and empathy no matter what happens.
Thank you for that beautiful message. I hope one day to meet you in person because you are this beautiful being and just a lot of really great information. And thank you for your courage too for writing this book. I really appreciate that.
Thank you for saying that. It's my pleasure, though. I'm very happy to be of service, but thank you so much.
Thank you.